So when I first looked at the subject of the panel discussion, the future of BIM is not BIM, and in the BIM Summit, that was a bit surprising for me. And I think it's a very valid question, basically, and it's something that we need to be asking ourselves and moving forward with it, because if one thing we know, it's a changing environment. If not on a monthly basis, maybe on a weekly basis, it's just changing and rapidly doing so. So my first question would be is, how do we see technology changing the way that we design buildings and structures? Where do we see ourselves? Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Thank you, Farah. I think technology is moving very fast, and technology is not going to wait for anyone if they are not go up with a rapid improvement and fast growth in the technology implications. A few years ago, what we are doing today, it was like a dream or science fiction, but now it's became reality. And technology, again, it's surprising us every day with the new things. Who knows, just 10 years ago was the first iPhone. Now it's became the normal thing for all of us. It's like personal computer we are carrying in our hands every day. So I think we are on the middle of the way in technology for construction. Construction considered one of the industries lately catching up with the fast, rapidly growing technologies. So I think there's still more and more to come. We are on the midway, not for BIM, on overall technology implementations in construction industry.
But where do you think it will take us forward? We know that, I've shown the facts of where we are in terms of an industry. We still have a long way to go. And we're catching up because projects do not wait, deadlines do not wait. So where do we think technology will take us in terms of design in general?
Okay.
The question is actually how much is the technology implemented in the work? Is it understood as an icing on the cake, or is it understood as the base that the cake is made from? The problem is that it has been implemented for years now. I could say easily 25, 30 years. The BIM technology has been implemented predominantly in the design, not so much in the construction as construction.
Yes, 100%.
Which is on one hand good for design, but it's not good for the construction. If you remember the triangle of BIM, people, process, technology. The technology is moving forward. Even the technology stalwarts of today, the companies that are providing the technology have to work much harder than us users to keep up than some newcomers, because the path has been more or less cleared. And even we don't actually see what is going to happen tomorrow. Like Marwan said, what was unimaginable a couple of years ago is quite normal today. So what I would like to see is the technology being an enabler and modifying the processes, and that can happen only if the people embrace the technology and understand that the technology is not an icing on the cake, not a nice thing to have, not something to boast about, but something
it's a must thing to have.
To base your business on.
Yeah, 100%.
It's part of the process.
Yes. And what we're seeing right now is that the technology is focused on production predominantly, and not the thought process behind it, which is engineering and strategy. And that's probably something that we'll see in the future. I believe if anything would change, that would be something that would change in the future. So I can see you nodding your head, so please.
Yes, I would just like to add the people factor, because it's something that sometimes companies and the industry in general is not thinking about, but it's all about people, processes, and technology. Yes, technology is important, evolution of the tools is important, but you need to have those three components in line to achieve the
100%. Yeah.
And it's all about the training as well. It's no good having these fantastic softwares out there which are being used by 3/4 of the industry. So for example, I come to this from an interior design perspective, from a production package perspective, whereas I've worked with architects, I've worked with MEP, I've worked with structures. They have embraced BIM. they're a lot more advanced than ID is. Now, when we're being asked to produce BIM-friendly packages, that's really challenging for our industry because we don't have the level of expertise within the people coming into the industry and the people already here. And we also don't have the understanding at C-suite level. They don't understand the complexities of producing a package in ID within the BIM environment. I'll give you an example. Last project I was designing was a hotel. We modelled the whole of the ground floor in SketchUp. The reason we did it in SketchUp is it's really, really quick for us, and we can do a very crude fly-through for the client. They can see the spatial elements within that, and we can do it incredibly quickly. We were told by our senior level management, you can't use SketchUp. It's like, why can't we use SketchUp? Well, no, it's not suitable to be used within the Revit capacity. When I did a little bit more research, SketchUp is within the BIM family of products. Now, if a senior level management is, by the way, that's not at my current position, I just have to point out, if the senior level management don't understand the ins and outs of this fantastic technology that we have, how are the people with the boots on the ground expected to be A, quick, and B, productive?
And this is where we are currently. What we're trying to focus on, where we'll be in the future.
Exactly.
And I'm, if I summarize what you're saying right now, is we need still a little bit work of where we are currently in order to move forward.
And for my industry, I think we're at the stage within BIM where we were in the early 90s when AutoCAD came onto the scene. There was a lack of knowledge there, where we were going for hand-drawn into the computer-aided design.
Yeah.
It's all, my opinion is, it's all about education. And we're talking about embracing this new technology. Investment needs to happen. Time, training, money.
Yes. And we can see that there's a lot of improvement to happen, so it's going to be a return on investment that the client should be thinking of, right?
Yeah. Can I add something? Actually, we keep on saying that technology is evolving very fast. The reality is it has been for decades now, but it was evolving around the AEC industry, the construction industry. We have seen manufacturing industry mature, leveraging all these technologies over the decades. We saw media and entertainment, finance. For some reason, we can go in a deep detail of the construction industry, why we have been laggards, like you showed earlier. We haven't been leveraging technology. We have been very slow at looking at it because of our project deadlines. We are happy to see our project getting delayed by 30% of the time and our project budget going up by 30 to 40% again, but not ready to spend some time initially to choose the right tool set.
Yes.
Let's not forget, we are trying to put together a village to deliver a project. And every family is different. They have different customs, different ways, and different beliefs. And we are trying to get a common goal done, unlike the manufacturing industry. So technology has been evolving around us. We haven't been leveraging.
So in addition to technology, there's a culture shift that should happen.
Correct.
Yes.
And for us to look on the long term, rather than the short term trying to save money in month one, for example, where you pay later in a couple of years more for the delay and so on.
Correct.
It's
So
about-
I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
it's okay.
just to really bring it together with my previous statements. So we're not talking about BIM anymore because of the fact that, are we done with BIM? No, we haven't. We have barely scratched the surface, at least this part of the world. We're talking about the BIM of the next level is it's not going to be a new SIM or TIM or any of it. This is going to be more the connected BIM. When I'm saying connected BIM, I'm very, very cautious for using this statement. The fact is, I am not anymore talking into isolation. Our BIM as a design firm needs to be connected to interior design. It needs to be connected to the GIS so that I am able to talk to municipalities and they are able to talk to me. It needs to be able to talk to finance because at the end of the day, the time and the cost is the key to my clients. And at some point of time, when I hand over this BIM model to the people who are going to own, operate, maintain, and at some point of time renovate this asset, they need to have this insight in there. So that's the fundamental of the connected BIM. That's what I believe personally that that is the future of BIM.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
just very quickly, it's the collaboration.
Sure.
We're all used to working in isolation
Yes.
at the moment. We have to collaborate from the start. If you get the collaboration correct from the start, then it's a much smoother process.
Yeah. No.
My colleagues all they kind of answered the questions in bits and pieces. Okay, technology is really at the tail end of the problem. Technology is an enabler, is not a solution. You mentioned collaboration, you mentioned processes, you mentioned PPP, people processing technology, and add policy as well. Really, the problem is bigger than that, the industry. You mentioned, Farah, why we are at the second lowest productive industry compared to the other industries. Really, it starts with the question is why we can't collaborate. Okay, who is in the value chain to deliver on projects? You got multiple stakeholders, right? The owner, the project manager, the designers, the contractors, and their supply chain. Okay. Well, studies has it that our current contractual vehicles to deliver on projects, they're highly transactional, which really comes down to that more than 50% of the cost of the project just goes wasted on overhead administration of the project, and little is left to actually deliver, right? So really, if you look at this problem with a very big microscope, you got to look at what's the right contractual vehicle to deliver on a project to basically take advantage, to allow collaboration by way of taking advantage of technology. Technology right now is nibbling at the edges of the problem. It can't fix the problem. We could make tactical successes, but we cannot make strategic successes until we resolve our problem.
100%. I totally agree with you. It depends on the people that are working and the commitment that comes from them. But having said that, at the same time, we know that we still have work yet to be done, especially on the platforms that we're currently using. Technology in other industries and the whole wide world is just running, and we're trying to catch up. And that's one of the concerns that we all have.
I think this is about leveraging the right technology for the right workflow. So there are many technologies out there in the market, if we look, and there are multiple processes within the construction life cycle that we need to target one by one and try to pick the right solutions for the right feature. That's really important in the selection process. Instead of generalizing, let's say, one solution for everything, which might be very good in many areas, but will not be able
Not specifically for our industry.
handle specific ones. So
and that's
picking
probably
the right
one of the things that are preventing us from having this general approach in our industry and is dropping us down in that ranking that I showed in the morning.
But also there's another problem that most of the solutions and the new innovations focus on the technology itself and the tools used in the industry. In my opinion, there is lack of clear definitions of process itself. The BIM management process, the roles and responsibilities, on the strategic level. After all, technology, it could be shaped for the way we need it, or we could use it for the way we need it to suit us.
Not the other way around.
Not the other way, actually. 100%. So, in my opinion, there is a lack, actually, of clear standards, even in most countries of the world, except Singapore. There is a lack of clear standards of the BIM process itself. There is a lot of standards for the models and deliverables and technology, but there is lack of standards for the management of the process itself.
Sorry.
Speaking of processes and the value of the project, right? The famous McClamey curve, BIM, BAM, boom. $1 spent in design is $20 in construction, is $60 in operation.
Yes.
So we are all forgetting that. Not us construction professionals might be aware of it, but the bad thing about it is that the people who are paying us, who are signing the checks, the investors, the developer, the decision makers are mostly not aware of it.
Yeah.
And that comes down to education in the broadest possible term, right? Because there was an old story from an interview we had on one of the Dubai families, he was talking about the life in the beginning of the UAE, and they asked him, you didn't have air conditioning, how did you live? And he replied, we didn't know that we were hot, we thought it was normal. So people who are still clicking away on 2D drawings on black screens, I'm not going to name any software here, are not aware that they could do the things differently.
Yes, yeah.
There is one more point, especially related to the industry, and that is the contractual part. You are saying mechanical engineering. BMW doesn't give somebody their car to design, and then they build it while procuring the parts from somebody else, right? It's an integrated process. It's a design and build process. It's, let's call it integrated project delivery. Yeah. There are no contractual, legal, or if they are very rare, frameworks that enable that in the construction industry. So we can have best possible technology, we can have BIM beyond BIM, we can have Internet of Things, we can have artificial intelligence, we can have whatever, but as long as I as a consultant say my buck stops here, then you take over.
Yeah.
There is no BIM.
There is no, yeah. I'll move on to the next question. And basically we're hearing a lot about catchphrases right now: artificial intelligence, generative design, machine learning. How is it going to help designers explore alternative approaches and select the most optimal and sustainable design solution? And as a consultant, when I use the most optimum and sustainable, it kind of gets nervous a little bit, because it's a very open-ended requirement from the client's end. But with all of these, how do we see ourselves, especially in the design aspect?
As interior design, the technology is there already. It's whether the client's willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
The question, I think, either for sustainability or improving design and all the other things we've been talking about, like collaboration, the key really is the information. So when we talk about BIM in general, building information modeling, people tend to focus too much in the M and not so much in the I, but information is really key. And information, in terms of sustainability, let's say, it's what is the result that the client wants to have, you know, after all this process of design and construction. So let's say, as an example, the result has to be that the building itself has to be zero waste and, you know, recycling the water, certain KPIs for that building. So when you are at the design stage, that should be the guide or the focus of the information that you need to generate, that you need to create. For example, using generative design, you can tell to a software, I want to have a result for a building with, let's say, 10 floors and 5 rooms per floor. What's the best floor plan for this regarding the shadows, the light, you know, all these aspects. So it's always really the information. Without having a clear vision of what that useful information will be in the future, it's hard to either collaborate or even make decisions, because when you talk about sustainability, it's like, what's the most sustainable proposal? It all depends on the end result that you want to have.
So another thing to add here, like sustainability can be a process, or it is a process actually, which starts as early as the design and then the construction, and it's not just in the operation and maintenance phase of the project life cycle. So you need to start by having enough details and information in your workflow and in your processes, which allows for those smart technologies like AI and let's say the tools and gadgets that we can use on site to have constructible information, which will allow those tools to perform or carry out the execution on site as per the intent.
So it's a 360 cycle.
It is definitely.
This is what we're saying. It doesn't end at design. It doesn't end at construction. It's a cycle that has to, and that's where the learning comes from.
Exactly. So you need to carry all that learning, and let's say the BIM technology as an object-oriented technology in the back end allows us to absorb those information and then reutilize that historical information for upcoming and future development. So it's not theoretical or just textbook, basically, that we're talking about. It's lessons learned and
Speaking of parametrics and generative components, there was or still is, I don't know, software that was called generative components, right? I think it was produced by Bentley. and it was practically a system that was making decisions and solutions based on your input. It is the same today with I don't know, Grasshopper or Dynamo or other parametric scripting environments that can drive the authoring packages. So let's say you can check 50 design options or variations within a fraction of time that will actually take you to do it manually. So from that point of view, AI and scripting and parametrics are extremely important. But we must never forget that it's all here, that we do the job.
Yes,
So-
I totally agree with you on that. That's where, the technology starts. We shouldn't be depending 100%.
Let me just say this, a couple of insights around it. Last decade or so, technologies which were built around the AEC industry were predominantly replacing the tools. You had 2D platforms being replaced by 3D platforms and all of these things which were replacing the tools. Over these 2 decades, we have gathered a lot of data, and I'm really not going into the fact that how AI, artificial intelligence, big data, and cloud is changing the rest of the industries. But coming back to our industry, I think most of us spoke about the importance of processes. While we had all these tools, we were really trying hard to make them work in our processes which were like 50-year-old. And they were really, really hard. And now I think we are at the brim of that stage where the processes are going to be questioned. And I'm going to give you a few examples. I truly believe that we will not be able to afford to follow the processes which we had 50, 20, 30 years ago with these new tools coming in, because the new generation is coming already equipped and skilled with these tools. So let's take an example of design. As a designer, if I have to use the tool set which was there in past, a 2D or 3D tool set, or I'm going to use artificial intelligence or generative design, which is a goal-based design, where not only I'm able to define the tangible goals, like what is my FAR, how much sustainability ratings I want to achieve, I can also gather and input my emotional data on it. Emotional data means that my people sitting on this floor want to stay away from elevator. So when it is going to give me the options, it's going to keep that emotional factor in there. People do not like to be disturbed while they are walking by the conference room. How can you keep that in mind? So all these factors, all these objectives and goals, when I'm able to give it to the system, and system generates 100 options, I'm not really going to flaunt that it can actually generate 100,000 options. Let's say it gave me 100 options. Now, I can still narrow it down, because now, this time, my computer, my tools are not the garbage in and garbage out. It's an assistive person for me who is helping me. You can think of it as a calculator, someone who is doing some maths for you, the labor work. Now, once I chose, for me, sustainability is the key, that people comfort is second. Everything else I can let go. So then options narrow down. It gives me options, I pick it up. Now remember this, there will be, not only there was a change in the process, there is a possibility it can generate the drawings automatically. Now think of this automation, how it is going to change the process in your office. How your people have to think of new ways of delivering value to the project. And how the contractor is able to pick up this information model now and say, I need to build this in 12 months. Where should I dump my material? Which section should I start building first? And you will be surprised, I can overlay the weather data on it, and I can actually produce the schedule which is sensitive to the weather if you are living out of that place. So to bring it together towards the final, these technologies, artificial intelligence, generative design, cloud collaboration, 3D printing, they are going to change the processes of AEC construction. And I am not really thinking we are so far away that we will see us going up in that productivity chart.
I'm hoping that we do. I'll move on to the next question, which is also something that is near to my heart, integrated project delivery. And the reason that I say so is we have a lot of software that we're using, a lot of platforms and so on, but I can say with surety that it's not integrated. It's fragmented to an extent, and especially when it comes between design and construction and going into maintenance and the DLP period. Where are we, Noor, in that regards? And why are major contractors moving forward with that?
Okay. So I don't want to talk about technology when we talk about IPD, okay? IPD is more about what's the contractual vehicle to deliver on our project. Typically, we do design build, and there's few projects where you do CM at risk, right? And the reason for these contractual vehicles is really to make sure that, you could foster collaboration in some form or fashion, right? But you see with the design build, for instance, and design build is highly transactional, right? Everybody is trying to cover their risks and bags and what have you, and really not looking at the best interest of the project, let alone the client. IPD, what it is, it's basically allows the owner and the owner rep project manager, design consultants and contractors to work as one entity under one legal entity, okay, to foster collaboration and foster trust between the parties, right? So it's what it fosters is an environment that's highly collaborative. There's shared, the risks are shared, the liabilities are shared, and the goals are aligned. So as a designer, I want to, my goal is to really have the most innovative design built. As a owner, my focus is to get the best outcome for the cost that I'm paying. As a contractor, I want to make sure that I'm going to be able to design, the project. I'm going to be able to construct the design project on schedule and on budget. Yeah. So IPD give you that. The technology is an enabler, right? IPD, the successes of IPD hinges on really a high trusted environment, meaning all the parties need to trust each other, which requires a deep involvement from the client, which can play the role of an arbitrator in certain cases to make sure that the project can move on.
And we can see that right now, because, and I guess to summarize what you're saying, it's the integration between the procurement and the delivery strategy. Procurement being design and build, delivery strategy, the different platforms and software that we're using, right, which should have, a transparent environment between all different stakeholders. Right. And isn't that part of PPP that we're seeing a lot of clients go forward with it, where they're integrating the contractor and the consultant and the requirements at the front end to ensure that they have an efficient delivery strategy?
Right. And the BIM itself is an enabler for that.
Yes.
Okay. And then allow you to skip several, minute tasks and tactical tasks that you would do in design build or design build that you wouldn't do in an IPD. Okay. For instance, you could, from going from design into construction, the fabrication, part becomes very, very quick because, your design consultant can work with your contractor to issue the detailed, fabrication cut sheets, right, from the model, right, because the risks are shared, right? You're not worried about sharing information. Where in the design build, well, okay, now you're concerned. I'm going to give you the model, and it's up to you, Mr. Contractor, whether you're going to use it or not. That's a different model, right, because there's no trust. Everybody's trying to cover their own risks.
So, just to add, I think Noor brought it in the beginning of this session also. This contractual arrangement is so critical for the success of our industry that we all need to talk more about it than technology itself. It lies on the fundamental of the backbone, which is transparency and trust, which he mentioned. And BIM pretty much can bring that in. The connected BIM really makes sure that everyone has got access to the same information and they can interpret it from their perspective, whether designer, contractor, owner, or anyone. But they need to look at the same data. It doesn't have to be someone's data and they slice and dice it from their favorable things. I always say this, that all these arrangements of our contractual arrangements in past were designed like, who is going to be responsible when we fail? Okay? This is how I summarize it.
Who are we going to blame?
Who are we going to choke? Whose throat are we going to choke when we fail?
Yeah.
The IPD's fundamental is like this. How can we share the reward when we win?
And again, we're talking about culture shift.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
Culture shift that will enable us to do that and share information.
I
Change
call
the
it
mindset.
resistance because it's normal as human beings. Actually, we usually lean to resist to change our things we've been doing for years. But I want to comment on something. There is also a technical challenge for the integrated project delivery. Because in order to have the ideal integrated project delivery and the common environment where all information could be shared, you need to have the technology to be ready for open source file extension maybe and exchanging data freely between different solutions and platforms. So ideally you should have a model deliverable. The designer is free to use whatever tool he wants. The contractor should use whatever tool he wants. The client should be use whatever tool they want on the operation stage. But eventually, all should be able to talk to each other. At the moment, I see that still it's a technical challenge in the industry. It's need to be overcome by the software solution providers.
Yeah, but by definition, like IPD is a change in mindset, and it's like an alliance between the different stakeholders for the sake of delivering that end product, which is the project. So in order to do that, we all need to change our mindset in terms of adding more interoperability, changing the process, and sharing the risk. So if we agree to that, IPD will become a successful model. Otherwise, it becomes like continuation of the current process.
And the industry itself is actually not built on collaboration at all.
Yeah.
It is built on adversity. So I'm the consultant, so, Mr. Contractor, let's see, what do we do now? Yeah. Oh, I'm afraid from the client, right? That is the operational truth of the industry. But what Marwan was saying, and Suhail also, interoperability in the BIM sense of the word means that software talks to each other.
Yes.
The site manager doesn't call me and ask me, what is the distance between the columns on grid line 27? How do I know what is the distance of columns on grid line 27 off the top of my head at any time of the day? I don't. But if he opens the model, he sees it. I'm very famous with people that I work with. When I get to the site, first I ask them to bring the drawings. Any drawings that is more than a week old, I tear up and throw away. Because people love their paper. Right? Common data environment is beyond BIM. There should be one space where everybody who needs to get an information should and can get the information from. And reliable information that is contractually correct and that is design correct.
So it's a shift basically from a blame culture or being defensive into more of collaboration and transparent.
Open.
And it will, I think that it will only shift once we see the benefits of doing so, especially that the clients and the asset owners. So it's something that should happen, and eventually when it does, everyone would understand the benefits.
Yes. I would just like to add an example of BIM generally and how it's better to have an IPD versus, the traditional design build, for example. So maybe there's people here who are new to BIM and they're thinking, okay, they're talking about the contractual, but if we go to the information and model level itself, you see those results. For example, when you have design build, you will have the designer do a model, put certain information there that they think it's important for the client or for themselves, and then when they go to the contractor, they may or may not share that model. Most probably they won't, and they would just share a set of drawings or something. So information is lost, and most importantly, the input of the contractor that is very valuable during the design process is lost. So when you have this integrated project delivery, then you can go from the beginning in the design, take the FM people, take the contractor and say, what's important to have in this project to generate the results that the owner wants. And then when you start doing the modeling and inputting the information in the model, it will be what is really useful for the result that's expected, and not just, in the different... Yeah.
So I'll move to the next question, which I believe we've touched on. But how do we convince the benefit of all of this technology? How do we convince the different stakeholders? And in particular, the local construction industry, predominantly contractors. Because as we said, we're using it in design, kind of falls, not being very implemented during construction and during maintenance. If it's not carried on during construction, it doesn't mean a thing because changed a lot. How do we convince the different stakeholders?
Showing real examples of great achievements. For example, now in one of my projects, we have used BIM at construction stage efficiently for overall project reporting, but not in ideal 4D, it's 4D plus many other data. And we showed to our client, it took us like quite a while with our contractor to work on it, but when we showed to the client, he realized actually that how great it is, and he decided to use it all in their all new projects. And they asked us to help them how to write this in the contract conditions, so for their future projects, they want to implement the same. The best way to convince people, to show them the real result,
is by implementing it in reality.
And also trying to explain, okay, let's say, I don't want to say educate the client, it's not a nice word, but I mean, raise the awareness among the decision makers, the right decision makers. And most importantly, they need to give this awareness or this advice from the right advisor, not from a software seller, with all respect, of course, to software in the industry. But I mean, get the advice from the right entity or the right persons. We always recommend the clients, get your advice from your project management consultants, because they are neutral. They are working for the project favor. They are not working for the design
for selling
yes, and they are not providing the design or the construction. They are just advisor, purely client advisor. They will give the right advice. So this is the only way, I mean, raising awareness.
And we've all worked on projects that we've utilized software, and we know how much beneficial it is. But when it comes to facts and numbers and how much we've saved and so on, that kind of gets
unfortunately,
unclear.
In the Middle East region, I noticed there is lack of research and development by the clients or companies themselves. Usually in Europe and US, you will notice that even the contractors, the designers, they are doing measures and studies that we are using this solution and how much time we saved, for example, how many RFIs we have reduced successfully. There's measure tools. Unfortunately, I haven't seen that implemented quite widely in the region here. But I mean, lesson learned from each project, this is the ideal way. Studying each project, what benefits we gained, what's lesson learned, what savings we had, and then implement in the next future project.
I say you need to look at the problem more holistically. I mean, you just look at the numbers, right? Okay, you showed on your slides that 7% of the human population is basically, in the construction industry. That's about 500,000 people, right?
Yeah.
We spend $10 trillion a year, right? So how much of that is waste when we are around the second lowest in the productivity line?
And we're 80% beyond budget,
and you looked at, it's a highly transactional business right now, which would mean that the clients probably may paying twice, 3 times on what they should pay, and the consultant is not making quite a bit of money. The contractor is making single-digit profit. So all the stakeholders are in a lose-lose-lose situation with the current situation, right? Technology is an enabler, but until you fix the problem at the top, you cannot make a big bang with the technology. You could nibble at it. You could make tactical wins, but you're still nibbling. Yeah. And so long you're nibbling, you're looking at the cost of the technology and not at the value. Okay, you're not looking at the outcome. The value proposition is really in the outcome, in the no ROI. But you're not going to see the ROI until you fix the problem at the top.
And this is where, that's exactly where I'm coming from. Because when I was looking at the research to understand where we are in terms of an industry, numbers came up from the US, numbers came up from Europe, but we don't have a lot of numbers coming up from our region. And unless you have, facts and hard data, it becomes a bit difficult for you to...
Maybe that's because of the culture thing. You find there's a cultural resistance actually toward being open about the project data and information.
Yes.
This is one of the biggest
transparency and the change in culture that we're talking about.
Yes, transparency doesn't exist.
My experience is that we're very, very quick here to jump on the bandwagon of new technology. But we're jumping on it too soon before we can drive the cart. We need to actually learn how to drive the cart before we jump on the bandwagon. It's education. It's education at the top, it's education at the bottom. And once those two meet in the middle, then, hey, we're winning. But there's no point bringing in these new technologies if we don't know how to use them, because, as you say, there's a lot of waste and time spent making mistakes and learning on the job. Yes, there's a lot of learning on the job when you actually work on any project, because that's how you learn. But we need to be competent enough to be able to actually just fine-tune on the job as opposed to actually learning our trade on the job. There's got to be more training.
Yes.
And more training at high level.
One of the great examples I have seen, actually, there's one project in Abu Dhabi. The client was very open-minded, actually, and he wanted to allow new technologies and solutions, and they brought an excellent BIM consultancy company to lead the whole process of BIM implementation of the project from the client end. And one of the measures, because the owner of that BIM consultancy was a PhD holder, very famous, well-known. He did a study for the client himself, and he told him, usually for a project worth 70 million dirham, during tender stage, how many queries you get from the contractor. So that was the figure. For that particular project, they got only 2 queries, believe it or not.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So I'm using that always
Normally they get 2,000, right?
Yeah, exactly, but
Yeah.
at least.
Another thing on this, like lately we are trying to finish projects, or let's say do projects on a super fast, super agile approach.
Yeah.
And that's not given enough time for everybody around the life cycle to study it well and
That's
try
right.
to optimize the process here and there, optimize the design, optimize the execution.
We always assume that the training will happen while we're doing the work.
So when technology
Right?
comes in, it
Yeah.
becomes like an accessory, which sometimes become a hurdle rather
Yes.
than a facilitator.
Yeah.
And it ends up with not the results that we're expecting. That's why, for example, productivity, or as you showed on your slides, is actually decreasing instead of increasing when we're adopting technology.
I think we also need to look at it this way. Mostly when I see, at least now it's changing, there used to be a BIM team, right? There's an allocation of few guys who would be in the project team. They are the BIM team, they are supposed to do the BIM. So all you could see is the cost, that the people being allocated to this, software, hardware and everything. And I have been always advocate of this fact that similar to everything in a project, we have to define the goals and the KPIs when we are investing into the BIM. And what is the outcome? What is happening traditionally is that we get this BIM team involved, we have the softwares installed, and we get started on the project. Sometimes we really forget the fact that we need to pilot and enable this team. And sometimes we haven't defined the goals. At the end of the project, we question ourselves, so we invested this 100,000 dirhams, what did we get in return? We haven't really tracked the journey. Was it helpful that we were able to reduce the detailed design by 2 weeks? What does that really quantify into? And what does that quantify when I gave the clash-free design to contractor? Did he get benefited?
Yeah.
And if we reduce 10% of the site changes, believe me, these are the 3 things. If you put the numbers against them, the investment on the software, hardware, and the people will feel peanuts. But we kind of miss the fact that we have to track them. We have to define these goals and hold people accountable, not the BIM team. The BIM should be one of the KPIs for the project manager.
Yeah.
If he wants to deliver the project on the schedule, this transparency is going to help him a great deal. He doesn't have to look at it as a team who has to prove themselves.
It's an investment, as you said. So the more I put into it in terms of effort and time,
The maturity will change.
the more mature it will become, and the more utilizable in the future it can be.
Yes.
You know?
And also talking about the future of BIM may not necessarily be BIM itself. Something that it's a constant is change. Change will always be there. And what I find in companies when we are doing assessment or introducing a new technology, people are afraid of change.
Yeah.
So if we are open to change and understand that maybe the change right now is this training in BIM, you know, the modeling part, the information part, maybe in 10 years from now it will be project management with BIM or something else. So change will always be there, and the more technology evolves, the more we need to evolve with technology. So.
Exactly.
We need to be comfortable with being
exactly.
uncomfortable.
And we shouldn't be focusing on one aspect of it.
Exactly.
Change is there, and we have to be open that the change is there and be flexible and agile to move forward with it. And one of the things, and I think you've just talked about it, are the team members that are associated with BIM or other technologies. Go ahead.
How is it, okay, let's say that the general view is that people who are at lower pay grade know how to operate stuff, and people at higher pay grade know how to think. And they go around, wave their hands, explain what they want, and then people at lower pay grade do the stuff, right? Is the somebody in the management less worthy of his position if he's operating his smartphone? No, he's not. So what's wrong if he opens a BIM model? What's wrong if he himself checks
Takes a look at it,
what is happening,
yeah.
takes a look at it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Then if I'm coming with a request to the owner of the company to buy 5 new licenses that cost as much as the, I don't know, Dubai municipality truck to take away the excavation from the site in the boarding, right? I don't have to explain anything.
He
understands. So it's the awareness game. If people don't understand that there is if you're using the technology, you should operate in one single data environment and be able to get your information for yourself, not filter it through other people, because human intervention is always prone to interpretation, right?
Yeah, so
computers
it's not about data entry.
It's not about entry. It's about interpretation and using and understanding.
At least reading it.
Yes.
Not necessarily.
Exactly. I'm always encouraging the other team members in our organization that BIM is not limited to designers or BIM managers.
Yes.
It's everybody. The PCS engineer should understand BIM and should think, okay, how he can benefit from it. The commercial guys, the QS, everybody actually.
Yeah.
So it should be part of the daily process for each profession.
That's something that we probably all should think about, because what we do usually is we say BIM manager, BIM, and we just stop at that within the team, which is not something that we need to.
No need.
Yeah.
No need to do
Yeah.
that. No
Should
need
be part of the daily process for each individual, but they should understand their relation to BIM. So PCS, they
everybody's reading email, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Everybody's using WhatsApp.
Exactly.
all
It's the same
team.
thing.
Yes.
It's the same
yes.
thing.
Yes. Yeah.
There is no difference.
And I skipped on purpose, one question that I wanted to leave some time for, and it's basically the need to move construction off-site. And I was, thinking about it. We know clients love to see the progress on site. They actually love to see even drawing within BIM on a daily basis, if not weekly basis. So if we're talking moving construction off-site, what would the reaction be? We know that the technology is going there. We have 3D printing coming in. We'll have to expect that clients will be looking at a finished product rather than looking at the work in progress and so on. But how close are we from that, and what do we think the reaction from stakeholders would be?
I mean, for ID, we're already doing that with pods.
Because you have manufacturing happening elsewhere.
Yeah, we create pod guest rooms now, pod bathrooms, anything. I mean, obviously procurement, there's a lot of elements that are already off-site. So, and we know the quality of the off-site manufacture is always much higher, and there's a lot of hospitality companies doing that already. So I think it's already there. It's becoming a lot more well-known and a lot more utilised. So yeah, I think ID is already there.
I agree. It's already been there for decades, even in another form of the precast.
Yes.
That's a good example. So it's off-site fabrication. The thing that with the new technology and 3D printing now, the range of products we can off-site assemble is
and
increasing.
The quantity of
yes,
the volume
quantity and
of
the
it.
range. Yes.
Yeah.
And if you think about it also, because at the upstream of the components, it's manufacturing. So that's also off-site partially. So it's like, yes, it's
So
already been there.
everything that's been there for decades, we know what the reaction is, but we're talking now at a higher level. We're talking about something, we're talking about sometimes houses and villas and so on. And where are we from there?
So industrial construction has been really happening in the shadows of the construction industry, like precast and all. What is changing now is the concepts like 3D printing and robotics coming into the play, where we are seeing that more and more robots are going to be seen on the construction site, which basically means that off-site, probably 30 to 40% of the building will be manufactured, RFI tagged, and shipped to the site. And labor doesn't have to really go through and try to identify these puzzles. It's the robots who are going to start picking these puzzles up and, like a Lego, build a building, which not only cuts down the schedule of the delivery, it also is going to change the quality of the project, the finish of the overall finish, and the cost of the project. That is changing, and it's going to develop more and more. We will be seeing more of robots on the site. We will be seeing the insurance cost going down, because now we don't have to insure a robot who is at the 40th story or something like that. And we are also going to see that the factories which are not producing just a floor slab or a bridge component, they are producing basically, like she said, rooms and pods of the toilets and everything are getting ready. Now all of that can be derived from this BIM model, put it into this factory, maybe multiple of them. And just think of this, Toyota is a classic example of they do not hold inventory of their cars. As they start shipping, the inventory starts shipping from the different vendors. And that's what is going to happen to the building, that as soon as you decide that you are building a building, the vendors will be getting the orders. They will start shipping the different components of the building. Right on the site, you might have a project manager, a construction supervisor, and a few people. Everyone else will be robotic, really getting these things down and putting together this Lego. Yeah. That's where we are heading. And I'm really not talking about 10 years from now. I'm talking about 3 to 5 years.
Yeah. Technology actually plays a major role in this particular off-site taking of construction. And by that I mean constructability of the finished product or the end product is
safety
what can...
in design and safety in general.
If you look at the construction market now, it's widely used in the steel and the concrete part. Like steel relies heavily on this in the fabrication process. Concrete started to pick up, and then MEP works when it comes to services, ducting and piping. It's picking up on that pace as well, because we all know that it's going to reduce on the rework need. It's going to optimize the process and make us more efficient in delivery. So in order to achieve that, we will need a tool which allows for constructability and giving us a product which is to the lowest level of detail required to make it work together and have that fulfilled.
Yes. In the end, the adoption of all the technology, either off-site or on-site, it depends on the cost as well, because the owner and the contractor will always do this cost analysis.
As with all technology, it starts with high price and then it goes down.
Well,
I mean, the labor cost and things like that also affect on how fast. Like some markets will adopt it very fast because for them it's like, urgent thing. Other markets will take more time.
The off-site construction is going to be always cheaper than on-site construction. That has been the key thing for its success, because it is not taking space. You can do faster work and get the job done really at a very high quality.
It will be more lean. Even.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Actually, sorry, I want to disagree there. There's especially for ID pods and guest room pods, there is a scale of economy that over a certain amount, then you start to make obviously gains. Under a certain amount, there's nothing. Yeah,
exactly. That's a fair comment, because if I'm trying to do an offset of a villa, it probably have to fall into that scale. Of course, absolutely.
There's always the economy of scale at any in any aspect.
We have to identify that in construction, each building is unique.
Yes,
100%. It's not like manufacturing industry. It's a repetitive process. And in construction, even in twin towers,
there's always an individual. Yes.
It's also normally, if it's obviously you've got a repetition. Minimal types, then you're going to make a much greater financial gain than if you've got multiple different types, and you're not really going to sort of gain anything, but the quality is always better.
And in a case that if you're able to give client the project or the asset handed over like 2 months earlier or a month earlier, even if the cost is higher, they might prefer.
It's a more complicated process than just, you know, the short-term payment or the advance. Yeah. Okay. I think we've 5 minutes left. Thank you very much, all. I don't know if you have a closing, something that you would like to share with everyone. No? That's.
Well, the future of BIM, maybe.
Is BIM or not BIM?
It's BIM and not BIM only. I mean, BIM and not only BIM. It's integrating BIM in the technology in the daily process for each individual in the company. And then, of course, interoperation and interoperability between different platforms. And of course, the new technologies of Internet of Things, blockchain, and this is the future no matter what it is.
And we have to move with the future.
We have to move with the future.
There's no other option for us.
The train will not wait for anyone.
No one, no. And hopefully next year will be a little bit more than second to last and last within our industries.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was very beneficial. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Most welcome.